All right, 53. But there is a certain resemblance in these two kinds, one of which we would have to be gentle, the other vehement, that makes it difficult to distinguish them. For something of that lenity with which we conciliate the affections of an audience ought to mingle with the ardor with which we awaken their passions, and something of this ardor should occasionally communicate a warmth to our gentleness of language, nor is there any species of eloquence better tempered than that in which the asperity of contention in the orator is mitigated by his humanity, or in which the relaxed tone of lenity is sustained by the becoming gravity and energy. But in both modes of speaking, as well that in which spirit and force are required as that which is brought down to ordinary life and manners, the beginning should be slow, but the sequel full and diffuse. For you must not spring at once into the pathetic portion of your speech, as it forms no part of the question, and men are first desirous to learn the very point that is to come under their judgment, nor when you have entered upon the track are you suddenly to diverge from it, for you are not supposed that as an argument is understood as soon as it is stated, and second and third are then desired, so you can with the same ease move compassion or envy or anger as soon as you make the attempt. Reason itself confirms an argument which fixes itself in the mind as soon as it is delivered. But that sort of eloquence does not aim at instructing the judge, but rather at agitating his mind by excessive emotion, which no one can produce unless by fullness and variety, and even copious of language and a proportionate energy of delivery. Those, therefore, who speak either with brevity or in a low, submissive strain may indeed inform the judge, but can never move him, an effect on which success altogether depends. It is clear that the ability of arguing on every subject on both sides of the question is drawn from the same considerations, but we must resist the force of an argument either by refuting those things which are assumed in support of it, or by showing that the conclusion which our opponents would draw cannot be deduced from the premises, or possibly follow from them. Or if you cannot refute an argument in this manner, you must bring something against it of greater or equal weight. But whatever is delivered with gentleness to conciliate favor, or with vehemence to excite emotion, is to be obviated by moving contrary feelings, so that benevolence may be eradicated by hatred and compassion be dispelled by jealousy. 54. A jocose manner, too, and strokes of wit give pleasure to an audience and are often of great advantage to the speaker. Qualities which, even if everything else can be taught by art, are certainly peculiar gifts of nature and require no aid from instruction. In that department, you, Caesar, in my opinion, far excel all other men, on which account you can better bear me testimony, either that there is no art in wit, or if there be any, you will best instruct us in it. I indeed, said Caesar, think that a man who is not destitute of polite learning can discourse upon any subject more wittily than upon wit itself. Accordingly, when I met with some Greek books entitled On Jests, I conceived some hope that I might learn something from them. I found, it is true, many laughable and witty sayings of the Greeks, for those of Sicily excel in that way, as well as the Rhodesians and Byzantines, but above all the people of Attica. But they who have attempted to deliver rules and principles on that subject have shown themselves so extremely foolish that nothing else in them has excited laughter but their folly. This talent, therefore, appears to me incapable of being communicated by teaching. As there are two kinds of wit, one running regularly through a whole speech, and the other pointed and concise, the ancients denominated the former humor, the latter jesting. Each sort has but a light name, and justly, for it is altogether but a light thing to raise a laugh. However, as you observe, Antonius, I have seen advantageous effects produced in pleadings by the aid of wit and humor. But, as in the former kind, I mean humor that runs through a speech, no aid from art is required, for nature forms and produces men to be facetious mimics or storytellers. Is that facetious? Yeah, facetious mimics or storytellers, their look and voice and mode of expression assisting their conceptions. So, likewise, in the other, that of occasional facetiousness, what room is there for art when the joke ought to be uttered and fixed in the mind of the hearer before it appears possible to have been conceived? For what assistance could my brother here receive from art then when, being asked by Philippus why he barked so, he replied, because he saw a thief? Or what aid could Crassius have received in that whole speech which he delivered before the centurveri in opposition to Scaevola, or when he pleaded for Nisus Plancus against the acquisition of Brutus? For that talent which you, Antonius, attribute to me must be allowed to Crassius by the confession of all mankind, since hardly any person can be found besides himself eminent in both these kinds of wit, that which runs through a continued discourse, and that which consists of smartness and occasional jokes. His whole defense in this cause of Curius, in opposition to Scaevola, was redundant with a certain pleasantry and humor, but of those sharp, short jests it had none, for he was tender of the dignity of his opponent, and in that respect maintained his own. Though it is extremely difficult for men of wit and facetiousness to preserve a regard to persons and times, and to suppress what occurs to them when it may be expressed with most pungent effect. Accordingly, some jesters put a humorous interpretation upon the well-known words of Enos, for he said, as they observe, that a wise man can more easily keep in flame while his mouth is on fire than withhold bona dicta, good words. And they say that good words mean witty sayings, for sayings are called dicta by an appropriate term.